Hello students, hope you all are doing well. This pandemic situation has brought a lot of changes and we all are undergoing a stressful situation. Students of classes 10 and 12 must be additionally worried about their upcoming CBSE board examination 2021. Krishnanagar Public School, Nadia, in its humble attempt to be by your side, have come up with special classes by a team of experts. We are thankful to Sting News for extending their welcoming hands. Students, all the best to you. Stay safe, stay blessed.
Hello everyone. A warm welcome to all my viewers and audiences today. I am going to discuss today on government budget and certain important topics of balance of payment. So to begin with, when we talk about budget, what comes into our mind? When we talk about budget, the very first thing that comes into our mind is all about money matters. It is the income and the expenditure that comes to our mind. See, when we talk about budget, what do? Let's take an example. For I have 500 rupees with me, and now I will try to allocate this 500 rupees with myself, which I am having with myself, under various heads. So this is how an individual prepares a budget. But when it comes to the government process of budgeting is quite different. The government does it in an opposite way. The government first decides all the relevant expenditures and all the heads where the government needs to spend, and then decides how the money will be received. So the government is first estimating the expenditure and then makes an estimate of the proposed receipts. So when we talk about government budget is the annual financial statement of a government, which describes in details the estimated receipts and the proposed expenditure of the government under various heads for one financial year or a fiscal year, which normally starts under normal condition on 1st of April and ends on 31st March of the next year. So to sum up, when we talk about budget, it is an annual financial statement of a government describing in details the estimated receipts and proposed expenditures and disbursements of the government under various heads for a fiscal year beginning on 1st April and ending on 31st March of the next year. When we talk about the government budget as per our syllabus or the curriculum laid down by the Central Board of Secondary Education, that is CBSE, the next topic that we need to discuss is the objectives of government budget. So the very first objective of government budget is economic growth. With the help of the government budget, the government tries to aim at achieving high economic growth. The government plans all its expenditure, like the government is making a plan for expansion of railways, or maybe thinking of bringing of new hospitals, educational institutes, the roadways has to be improvised, and everything else. All these are the plan of economic growth, which is a major concern for the government. For the stability of the government also, one of the major objectives of a government under the government budget is aiming at economic growth. Every government tries to aim at increasing GDP and its composition, and that is what one of the most important objective of any government budget is. Moving from economic growth, the second most important objective in a country like ours is reduction of poverty and unemployment. So through various provisions under various heads, the government of India plans to remove poverty, plans to free India from the clutches of the menace which is called poverty by generating employment opportunities. So the government of India is planning various employment opportunities through which the government can reduce the menace of poverty. So the second most important objective of government budget is reduction of poverty and unemployment. With this comes an associated objective, and that associated objective is called reduction of income inequalities. When the government is planning of creation of more and more of employment opportunities, that means more and more people are going to get job opportunities, more and more job opportunities will be available, there will be expansion of the industrial sector, manufacturing sector, and as a result the gap between the rich and the poor will be reduced. So another important objective of the government budget is reduction of income inequality. As poverty is reduced, the gap between the rich and the poor goes on narrowing down. As more and more of income opportunities are created, as unemployment is removed, as unemployment is lowered, the gap between the rich and the poor is reduced, and one of the objective of government budget, that is reduction of income inequalities, that is achieved. So the first objective was economic growth, then came reduction of poverty and unemployment, then came reduction of income inequalities. With this came redistribution of income. Redistribution of income does not mean that we are going to take money from the rich and give it to poor only. Redistribution of income means creation of employment opportunities in such a way that more and more job opportunities are there and income can move from the higher segment to the lower segment, so that people get enough opportunities. There is an equitable, there is a justifiable distribution of income all over the country. And this can only be achieved with a related objective of the government through the government budget, and that is reallocation of resources. We know that one of the program just after Indian independence that the government has taken was ceiling on land holdings. The government has introduced this program. That means those who are having land above a particular limit, the land will be taken from those people by paying a government compensation, and then that will be redistributed among people, among landless laborers and poor farmers, so that there is an equitable distribution of resources. So one of the budgetary provisions or one of the objectives of government budget is reallocation of resources by converting the resources or transferring the resources from the non-important sectors to the priority sectors, so that GDP enhances, economic growth of the country takes place. So coming back to the first objective, that was economic growth. With this comes in one more important objective of the government budget, that is price stability, or which is economic stability. See, too much of inflation or too much of deflation or depression, nothing is being desired in this country. We want stability, and that can only be achieved through adequate provisions of various incomes and expenditures through the government budget. The government under its budget will make various disbursements under various heads, which will lead to economic stability or price stability. Too much fluctuations in the price of the goods and services are never desired. So the government, through its various budgetary provisions, through its monetary policies, through its fiscal policies, will try to achieve the price stability objective. And last objective is financing and management of public enterprises. I am talking about those state-owned enterprises. I am talking about the government-owned enterprises which are under the purview of the government. So the government has to see or look after its income and expenditure of these enterprises also. So that is also one of the objective of the government budget, where the government is making provisions for all the industries which comes directly under its purview. Whether we talk about the BIFR, when we talk about the Board of International Financial Reconstruction, where the government is transferring the SIG industries. So there also a government budget is allocated so that the SIG industries can be revived. So these are all the objectives of government budget. With this we move on to the next segment, which is components of government budget. So when we talk about the component of government budget, we are basically talking about the structure of government budget. So the structure, that means types. The government budget can be of two types. One is the revenue budget and the other one is the capital budget. When we talk about revenue budget, we are basically talking about the budget of the government which incorporates the revenue receipts and the expenditures which are met from these revenue receipts. That means this budget allocates expenditures for the day-to-day functioning of the government. So when we talk about the revenue budget, we are basically talking about the proposed revenue receipts, whether it can be taxes, interest, dividends, profits, grant, whatever it is, and the revenue expenditures which are met from here, which are related to the day-to-day or the normal functioning of the government, including the interest payment which the government is doing on the government debt. So the first component, as I told you, is the revenue budget. The second component which comes with this is the capital budget. So when we talk about capital budget, it is incorporating the capital receipts and capital expenditure of the government. So when we talk about capital receipts, we are basically talking about those receipts which create a liability or reduce the asset holding of the government. Suppose, for example, when the government takes a loan, that is a capital receipt. When the government is selling an asset, that is also a part of capital receipt, because either a liability is being reduced either a liability is being created or an asset value is reduced. So that is what is capital receipt, which is the major part of the capital budget. So it's not only about capital receipt, it has to be capital expenditure also. So capital expenditure means an expenditure which leads to the creation of capital assets or reduction of financial liabilities. So as I told you that if taking loan is capital receipt, so repayment of loan is a part of capital expenditure. So as we were discussing, the components of government budget are two. One is the revenue budget, which deals with the day-to-day activities of the business and deals with the non-redeemable incomes of the business. And on the other hand, when we talk about capital budget, we are talking about the systematic or annual financial statement showing in details the capital receipts and capital payment of the government. Now, when we talk about receipts, when we talk about budget, when we talk about expenditure, we need to have a clear idea of what are the different types of receipts and different types of expenditure. When we talk about receipts, receipts are of two types. One is the revenue receipt and the other one is the capital receipt. When we talk about revenue receipt, this can be either receipt from taxes, which can be income tax, which can be corporation tax, which can be custom duty, excise duty, any type of tax that comes under the purview of receipt from taxes. And when we talk about non-tax receipts, that means these are those receipts which the government is receiving, which is not of in the nature of tax. That can be interest payment that we are making to the government, that can be any payment that we are making to the government for any services which we are taking from the government, the dividends, the profits, the grants. These are all those revenues which the government is generating and is non-tax in nature. So when we talk about receipts, these are either revenue receipts or non-revenue receipts. When we talk about capital receipts, we are talking about those receipts which create a liability, as I told you earlier also, which create a liability like taking a loan or creates reduction in an asset, like when we talk about recovery of loans, when we talk about market loans that we are taking, special deposits, public provident fund, external assistance, these are all part of capital receipts. So as we were discussing about the classification of receipts, we are now going to talk about the classification of expenditures. Expenditure can be basically either planned expenditure or it will be non-planned expenditure. When we talk about planned expenditure, quite obviously from the very name we can understand that these are those expenditures which are there in the government's 5-year plan. So these are those expenditures which the government has already thought of, and that is why it is planned expenditure. And non-planned expenditure, these are those expenditures which the government has not incorporated or thought at the beginning of the 5-year planning, and that is why they are known as non-planned expenditure. These expenditures can broadly be classified also as developmental expenditure and non-development. So when we talk about developmental expenditure, we are basically talking about those expenditures which lead to the expansion of the economic stability of the country, which leads to the economic growth of the country, which leads to the development of the country in one or the other way. But when we talk about provisions for regarding the payment of the defense services, when we talk about the provisions for regarding the provisions for the payment of government services, they are known as non-developmental, because basically they are giving us security, but they are not leading to any development of the country. So with this we move on to the next topic, and the next topic is basically the types of budget. When we talk about types of budget, we are talking about from the aspect of income and expenditure. We are not talking about zero-based budget, we are not talking about performance budget, non-performance, supplementary. We are talking from the basis of income and expenditure. So when we talk about the first type, which is balanced budget. Now what is balanced budget? Quite obvious, where the total receipts is equal to the total expenditure, that budget equalizes, and that is what is called balanced budget. But it may happen that the total income of the government, that is the estimated income of the government, is in excess of the proposed or the estimated expenditure. So that type of the budget is called surplus budget. On the contrary, if the opposite happens, if the estimated expenditure of the government is much more than the proposed income, then it becomes a deficit budget. So coming to the topic of deficit, this deficit can be of three types. One is the revenue deficit, then the fiscal deficit, and lastly the primary deficit. When we talk about revenue deficit, it refers to the excess of revenue expenditure of the government over its revenue receipts. So quite simple. Revenue expenditure is more and the revenue receipts is less. So that becomes, or that leads to revenue deficit. But this revenue deficit shows the current financial position of the government. As I told you, revenue, that means day-to-day functioning of the business. So it will reveal the current financial position of the business. It will reveal that the government spending is much more than the government income on a daily basis, on a day-to-day basis. And it also reveals or points out that the government pays a huge amount of money as interest on the debt which it has taken. So there are three implications. It will show the current financial position of the government. The revenue deficit will show or reveal that the revenue expenditures are much more than the revenue income. And it points out that the government pays a huge amount of money on public debt as interest. Moving with this, we have the second deficit, which is called the fiscal deficit. When we were talking about revenue deficit, we were only taking into account the revenue income and revenue expenditure. But when we talk about the fiscal deficit, we are taking into account the total expenditure of the government over its total income, excluding the borrowings which the government is doing. So when we talk about revenue deficit, it is the excess of the total expenditure of the government over its revenue and capital receipts, excluding borrowings. And this is leading to an inclusion that the government budget is running in deficit. It is a comprehensive measure which shows the fiscal imbalances of the country. It shows that the government has to borrow to meet up this deficit, which will create future liabilities. Future liabilities not on the present generation only, but also on the upcoming generation, because the government is going to take crores and crores of loan now, but the repayment has to be done by the next generation and the interest payment has to be done by the next generation. So this burden of repayment and interest payment creates a future liability, which is one of the major implications of fiscal deficit. So as I told you, the first type of deficit is revenue deficit, which will incorporate the revenue income and revenue expenditure of the government. Then came the fiscal deficit, which will incorporate the total expenditure and the total income of the government, excluding borrowing, which will give us a serious implication that the government will now have to borrow and the burden of the same will be followed by generations. The third type of deficit comes in is the primary deficit. So when we talk about the primary deficit, it is the fiscal deficit of the country that we were talking about and the interest payment on the government debt which the government has taken. So the importance of this primary deficit for us to understand is that it reveals the real position of the country. It reveals the real budgetary provisions of the country, that how much interest payment the generations has to make. So that is very, very important, because the loans have been taken in past and the interest payment and the repayment of the loan is being done in present, which is measured through primary deficit. Having explained you the importance of government budget or the components of government budget, the types of deficit and everything, one related concept that comes to our mind is called balance of payment. Now, when we were talking about government budget, we were incorporating all the proposed expenditure and the estimated incomes. So when we were talking about income, many a times we receive income from foreign countries also. We are into import and export trade. We are talking about buying and selling of goods with other countries and taking and giving of services. So either money flows into our country or money goes out from our country. So there has to be a record of this also. So balance of payment is a systematic record of all economic transactions between the residents of a country and the residents of foreign countries during a given period of time, which is usually 1 year. So if we maintain an account, we are going to talk about the recordings of what comes into our country from other countries and what goes out from our country to other residents of other countries. So this systematic record is called balance of payment. It is simply an account of all the payments made during a year by a country to the rest of the world and all monetary payment received by a country from rest of the world in 1 year. And that is why this record is called balance of payment. We always say that balance of payment always balances because there are certain autonomous transactions which will balance this balance of payment. But though that is not there in the purview of our syllabus, so we are not going to discuss that in detail. As we were discussing the components of budget, we are going to discuss the components of balance of payment also. So the balance of payment have two accounts. One is called the current account and the other one is called the capital account. As I am using the word account, we have to remember we are using the methodology that we follow in accountancy. Expenses will be debited and incomes will be credited. So when we talk about the current account, it records transactions relating to export and import of goods, services, unilateral transfers and international incomes and payments. Incomes and receipts are normally credited to the account and payments and expenditures are debited to the account. So when we talk about the current account, we are talking about payments and expenditures which are debited and incomes and receipts which are credited. But payment and expenditure and income and receipt of what? They arise from export and import of goods. So this is the category which is called balance of visible trade. Because when we talk about visible, that means these are those things that we can see. So when we talk about import and export of goods, we are talking about merchandise. We are talking about commodities that we can touch, see and feel. So this category includes all types of physical goods exported and imported. And that is why it is called balance of visible trade. Import of goods, because money is going out, that is why expense and debited. Export of merchandise and goods, since money is coming in from other countries, it is an income, it is credited. So the first one is current account, which comprises first visible trade, and the second item that is under the current account is invisible items. That means we are talking here about services. Let's take an example, the information technology services, the banking services, the communication services, the shipments that are coming from one place to another, the cargoes. These are all the services that we are talking about. And since these are services, these belong to tertiary sector, these are invisible. So when we were talking about export and import of goods, we had named them as visible. The services are named as invisible. So these are items which are intangible and cannot be seen. It includes services, unilateral transfers and other incomes. So import of services, unilateral transfers and payment received from foreigners, payment made to foreigners, these are all the expenditures. So they will be debited. And on the contrary, when we talk about unilateral receipts, export of services, foreign payment and remittances received, since these are all income generated, they will be credited. So under current account, we have two heads. One is balance of visible trade, which relates to merchandise and goods, and the other one is balance of invisible trade, which records services, unilateral transfers and other incomes. As I told you at the very beginning, the components of balance of trade are two. One is the current account and the other one is the capital account. So when we talk about capital account, it records all transactions relating to change in the financial and capital assets. So when we are investing in the shares of other companies in other countries, when we are buying assets in other countries, we are talking about that under capital account. Sale of assets and other form of capital receipts are credited because money is being generated from other countries. On the contrary, purchase of assets are debited. Investment in shares of other countries, the companies of other countries, these are debited because money is going out. So when we talk about balance of current account, it refers to the balance of capital transfers, borrowings, lending, sales and purchase of assets, stock of gold and foreign exchange reserves from other countries even. So when we talk about current account, we are talking about goods and services. When we talk about capital account, we are talking about investment and assets, either buying or selling of assets or investing or selling of investment. So this was all about the components of balance of payment. But if we talk about the components of balance of payment, one very important related concept that comes into our mind is called balance of trade. Now, what is this balance of trade? This is nothing new. We have already discussed, just a name has been given. Balance of trade shows the balance of imports and exports of visible goods only. Remember, when we were talking about the structure, we were talking about export and import of goods, and I told you that it is called visible trade. So that balance is known as balance of trade. So balance of visible items or balance of visible trade or balance of visible goods is also known as balance of trade. So this balance of trade, we are using the word balance. If a country is exporting more goods than it imports, then it will be favorable balance of trade because more money is coming into our country and less is going out of our country. But if the opposite happens, if we are importing more of visible goods and exporting less of visible goods, then the balance of trade will be unfavorable or deficit. So this was all the related concept of balance of payment. When we were talking about balance of payment, we have discussed it is a systematic record of all economic transactions between the residents of a country and residents of other countries in a given year. Incomes are credited to this account and expenses and expenditures are debited to this account. There will be two types of balance of payment. One will be current account, which will include balance of trade, that is balance of visible goods, and balance of invisible items. And the other one is the capital account, which will include the balances of capital assets. With this comes in our last component, and that is what is exchange rate. Now, when we talk about exchange rate, see, we are talking about that $1 is equal to 70 rupees or $1 is equal to 100 rupees, or we are saying 1 pound is equal to 50 rupees. And so this rate that we are talking about, this rate of exchange of our home currency with that of other countries' currency is what is called exchange rate. So exchange rate refers to the rate at which the currencies of different countries are traded or exchanged. Suppose for obtaining $1 from any bank in India, we need to pay 100 rupees. So the exchange rate between rupees and dollar becomes 1:100. So how is this exchange rate determined? See, when we talk about market economy, we leave the entire determination of price of any commodity in or to the hands of the market, that is to the demand and supply. The demand and supply of the commodity will determine what will be the price of the commodity. Similarly, the exchange rate will be also determined by the demand and supply of foreign currency into our country. So we were talking about exchange rate, and I told you that the rate of exchange is the rate at which we are exchanging our home currency with that of foreign currency. And I gave you an example. In order to exchange $1 from a bank, if we need to give 100 rupees, so the exchange rate of dollar and rupees become 1:100. This exchange rate are basically called exchange rate systems, and there are three types of exchange rate system. The first one is the fixed exchange rate system. Under this fixed exchange rate system, what happens? This rate of exchange between dollar and home currency will be determined by the central bank of our home currency. So the central bank is interfering, and under this the central bank is taking the role or the pivotal role of determining what will be the exchange rate of our currency with that of any other foreign currency. And since it has been fixed by the government or by the central bank, it is known as fixed exchange rate system. There is another exchange rate system which is called flexible exchange rate system. That is what I was talking to. When we talk that when we are leaving the exchange rate determination of our currency with that of the foreign currency entirely on the market, that means the demand and supply of the foreign currency and our home currency will decide what will be the exchange rate. It is called flexible exchange rate system. So under flexible exchange rate system, what happens? The exchange rate is left free to be determined in the foreign exchange market by forces of demand and supply. In this system, the central bank allows the exchange rate to adjust and equate to the supply and demand for foreign exchange. So that is why this flexible exchange rate system is also known as floating exchange rate system. Many times what happens, there is a combination of these two, which is called the managed exchange rate system. There is a certain intervention from the central government through the central bank, certain role is left to the market. So both of them jointly when decides the exchange rate, that is what is called pegged or the managed exchange rate system. When we talk about the exchange rate system, there are four very important concepts that we need to discuss. One is depreciation. So depreciation refers to the fall in the free market value of a domestic currency. When our currency's value goes down as compared to foreign currencies in the flexible exchange rate system, that is known as depreciation. But when the same is done by an action taken by the central bank, that is known as devaluation. So depreciation means the fall in the value of home currency when done through market forces of demand and supply. But when it is done through an action of the central government, through the central bank, it becomes devaluation. And when we talk about a rise in the free market value of the currency, that becomes appreciation. That is totally dependent upon the demand and supply of the currency. That is flexible exchange rate system. But when the same is done through a planned intervention by the central bank, it is known as revaluation. So revaluation means the action undertaken by the central bank to raise the value of domestic currency. So to sum up, when we talk about exchange rate system or exchange rate, this is the rate at which our domestic currency is being traded or exchanged with any foreign currency. This can be determined either through the flexible exchange rate system, which is the determination of the exchange rate through the demand and supply of foreign currencies, or it can be planned through central government by the central bank, which is the fixed exchange rate system. And depreciation refers to the fall in the free market value of the domestic currency, and when it is done through a planned action undertaken by the central bank, that is devaluation. Appreciation refers to the rise in the free market value of a currency, that is through the flexible exchange rate system, and when it is done through a planned action by the central bank, that becomes revaluation. So that was all about our discussion for the day under Unit 4 and 5 of our Class 12 CBSE syllabus of economics. Thank you, my dear listeners and viewers. Thank you all.